Okay, good afternoon everyone. Back to some law. Today we will talk about cybercrimes and law relating to cybercrimes. We can also talk about contracts and the civil side of things, but I thought it might be more interesting to talk a little bit about cybercrimes first. Sorry. This is just some statistics on... Yeah, sure, thank you. Just some statistics on the rise of cyber frauds in India. And as you can see from the headlines, frauds have jumped almost 1,000% in 4 years. And that's the amount, 22,000 crores. These are all such big numbers now that they start making sense, right? They stop to make sense. It's just such huge numbers lost because of cyber frauds. And we can talk about what cyber frauds are, so we'll get there in a minute. And increasingly, the smaller cities are the hubs from where these frauds are committed. Again, just a statistic, India is recording 2 cybercrime complaints a minute, is what the government is saying. So let me start with, what do you think cyber crimes are? What kinds of things might be included in cyber crimes? When you think of cyber crime or cyber fraud, what do you think of? Hacking, yeah. Money laundering, sure. Online scams, like what kinds of online scams? Yeah. Financial fraud of that sort, yeah. Anyone else? Has anyone been victim of a fraud, a scam? Anyone? You've not had calls from FedEx saying your package is stuck. Pay 1,000 rupees. Yes, I see some nodding heads. Or even worse, you have a package, it's in your name, it was found to have drugs. Right? That's one of the latest ones are these FedEx scams, where you get a call and they say your package, it's in your name, it has your address, and it's been found to have drugs, and it's someone, then they give you, come on a video call, the police officer wants to talk to you. And then you get on a video call, there is in fact somebody who's dressed like a police officer talking to you. And he says, you have to pay an immediate fine. If you pay an immediate fine of 10,000 rupees, this will be released. Other scams, we talked about, people sending emails, phishing scams, those used to be the older ones, or hidden malware. You click on something on your internet, on a website that you go to, which is not a safe website, and that introduces a virus into your machine, which can either take control of your machine and lock your machine, and then someone calls saying, if you want access to your machine back, this is what you need to do. And this is not just at an individual level, right? Obviously, cyber fraud occurs at an enterprise level, at a company level. And those have much bigger consequences, and there are multiple examples of that happening. Not just hacks to steal information, and there are a lot of examples again of hacks which are run oftentimes by governments, government intelligence agencies, as part of their information gathering. They hack into other countries' machines. There was news recently about the US Federal Reserve being hacked into, and emails of some of their top individuals or top officers there being compromised. Then there are examples of cybersecurity failures, right? Viruses which can lock down entire systems. And same method of operation, they say, okay, your machine, you cannot have access to your database of customers until you pay us this much. Other examples, information being available on the dark web. Anyone heard of the dark web? These are not places on the internet that you can regularly access by just typing in a www3. These are parts of the internet that are invisible but which have stolen information. There used to be a famous or infamous dark website called the Silk Route, and that was a place where you went if you wanted to get stolen information, meaning personal information, and it had people's phone numbers, IDs, addresses, bank account details, PAN card information, Aadhaar card information, US SIN information, all of that information. You could go there and find sellers who were selling this information per row, 2 cents or 2 rupees or whatever. So you buy 10,000 of those, and what can you use them for? You can in turn use them for running online scams. You could buy drugs there. You could buy weapons there. So Silk Route got shut down, but then there are other areas on the dark web where you can still get illegal information. So you have to know how to get there. Obviously, you need to have that intent to get there. That's an example of an area where you need international cooperation, right? The dark web is not as if it's all located in one place. It's like the internet, everywhere. It could be run by and contributed to by people in India, Russia, China, Vietnam, US, Brazil, everywhere. And it can be hosted everywhere on the cloud. Okay, next slide please. Okay, some more statistics, just to make it a little more visual. Right? Numbers sound big when you put them on a chart. It gives you some context. 2012 to 2022, I couldn't find information. There was some information for 23, but obviously it's gone up. That's on the y-axis is number of cybercrimes, x-axis is years. You can see how it's gone from a relatively small number, 3,000 to over 60,000, 65,000 in 22. In 23, it's gone up further. So that's you can see the over 1,000%, well, in this case now, much more than that because of the time range. But that's the number of cyber crimes that are reported and that are known. Many of us are not reporting cyber crimes because we think, well, it's not such a big loss, okay, whatever, big deal, right? Most crimes, most cyber crimes also go unreported unless they are of a certain severity. Then you think about reporting it. Next slide, please. Okay, so what kinds of fraud cases have been identified, and this is all India specific. In 2024, you can see most of the frauds were financial frauds. And financial frauds, a lot of it relate to stock market, mutual fund. Again, I don't know if any of you have received this mutual fund. This seems to be the newest scam now on the financial side. A lot of these Instagram and YouTube personalities who seem to promote investing in a particular mutual fund, right? And those themselves, it's not them promoting it, those are deep fakes themselves. They are not really those individuals, those are all fake AI generated images and voices. But also there are WhatsApp messages saying, double your money in 30 days, follow me. And then you go invest with that person. That person says, okay, give me 10,000 rupees, I'll double it, and 20,000, I'll give you 20,000 at the end of 30 days. You actually get 20,000 at the end of 30 days, and then you say, oh great, this is working brilliantly, I will now put in 50,000. That first time 10,000 was a trial, right? 50,000 I'll put in. And then suddenly that money vanishes. So that's an example of financial fraud. Obviously, other examples of financial fraud is just taking people's password and siphoning off money. Phishing scams are, like we talked about, online, asking someone to click on a link and then managing to get their account information and other details through that. Online harassment. Online harassment relates to sending messages, whether it's on WhatsApp or on Facebook, sending messages to try and harass someone. And often that obviously turns out as women being harassed by men, either putting up pictures or threatening to put up pictures or incessantly following up with them saying, come out with me, go here, go there, let's go here. Basically the harassment that occurs offline, same thing, harassment online. Identity theft. Identity theft is stealing someone's identity, right? Stealing your credit card information and then using that credit card to make purchases. Ransomware, as an example, it's again malware or virus that's put into systems in people's computers to then extract information from that. And then credit card fraud is, as it suggests, getting someone's credit card information and using it. All to say that the biggest of those, at least for 24, and have stars there because it's all not finalized data. It was, I think, until July or something. The biggest, and you can see that from 2014, every time the biggest bar is financial fraud. So financial fraud is the most common type of fraud, obviously, because that's what motivates a lot of the fraudsters. They just want to get money. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so there are simple online frauds to, like we said, phishing and OTP scams, getting your OTP and then extracting, having money transferred, to more sophisticated frauds like the FedEx scams we talked about. And then more recently, I don't know if some of you have heard about digital arrest, which is very similar to the FedEx scams, where you get a call from somebody saying you have been named as part of some ring that is involved in illegal activities. So you have to turn on your video right now. A police officer wants to talk to you. So you are wondering, when this is all fake, how can it be? It doesn't sound right at all. But they're not asking me to do anything else. I turn on video. Okay, I'll turn on my video. Turn on your video. There is actually somebody in the customs uniform or police uniform on the video saying the same thing. You have been implicated. You have been named. I don't know. You can keep saying it's wrong. You can keep saying, but you have been named. So the only way to get rid of this is transfer 1,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees, or come to the police station right now. Obviously, the better thing to do is to go to the police station right now because it's a scam, right? But that's what is digital arrest. Then they say, otherwise your phone will be locked, your phone number will be locked, you will not have access to your bank account will be frozen. All of that will happen immediately unless you pay 5,000 rupees as processing fees or whatever, something they come up with, right? Apparently that's something that's occurring right now. And then deep fakes. So there are interesting examples again over the last few months of people using AI to not only generate the voice of somebody copy the voice and generate that voice so that it says what they want them to say, but also make it look like there's a video of the person's face saying it. So an example of this was a bank employee. He was traveling somewhere and he got a call from his manager's phone number. So he picks it up and the voice says, "This is urgent. I know you're traveling. I am also traveling. But urgently to this account, I will send you the details on WhatsApp. You need to transfer 10 lakhs. Okay. The bank employee thinks, well, seems a little unusual. I am traveling, I am on leave, he is traveling. Why can't he call somebody who is in the office? Right. So he questions it a little bit. But that voice says, no, you need to do this right now. I can't get a hold of anyone else. I trust you. And then he says, okay. It sounds like his manager's voice. He doesn't have any other reason. He had some suspicions, but he probed. Seems consistent. And then he gets a WhatsApp message. The phone number is that of his boss's. He logs on into his employee database, transfers the money to this account where it was to be sent. All fake, all a scam. The scammers basically got a hold of this guy. They found out the manager's number. manage to not take his phone but use that number so that it appears on this guy's screen as if it is that number, use AI to record the manager's voice and then modulate it to say whatever they wanted to say, voice scrambling and modulation and all of that. Very sophisticated scam, right? Just the point is, scams are getting more sophisticated. So people have to be more vigilant in their jobs. Even if it is something like your boss calling you, you can't always trust that. In fact, it's your boss calling you. There have to be multiple levels of security, multiple levels of cross-check and counter-check. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so all those were examples, and then we will get to the law a little bit. I won't talk about each of these sections in detail because that will put you all immediately to sleep. But enough to say that there is a whole chapter in the Information Technology Act that talks about crimes, cyber crimes. Some of those are listed here. I put the last two in bold because those talk about privacy, and we've been talking about privacy over the last 3 days. So the last two focus a little bit more on privacy. The one thing we will talk about a little bit more is section 66A, which is sending offensive messages. But basically, things like altering source code, fraud, sending offensive messages, identity theft, sending obscene materials, all of that are crimes, all of those are crimes, and all of those can be punished. That can result in imprisonment. More important in the context of privacy is section 72A, disclosing personal information, including an intermediary. So if a bank has your information, which it does, it has your bank account details, it has your address, it has your phone number, it has your identity, it has your name, it has your age, a bank has everything, right? They have your personal information. So if without your consent the bank gives away that information, the bank is liable, and the officers of the bank who are responsible for security at the bank are liable for are criminally liable, meaning that they can have a criminal case brought against them and could go to prison. Obviously, the bank itself can have fines imposed against them, and we talked about that yesterday, I think, under the Information Technology Act, section 43. So not only will there be a fine against the bank, but its officers could go to jail, right? And that extends not just to the company that has your personal information, but also to the intermediary. So again, these platforms, let's say you've logged in, you've created an account on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, they have your personal information and they disclose it without your consent to somebody else, they are also liable the same way. Okay. Same way, section 72 talks about disclosing electronic records, and electronic records could be anything. It could be your medical information, for example, it could be your x-rays or MRIs, it could be your bank account statements that your bank has, it could be any other information that you give to somebody else. Let's say you're buying a house and you sign all your house purchase information, it's scanned, your agreement is scanned and saved as a uploaded PDF, that's an electronic record. It's uploaded to somebody who has it, right? If that person discloses it without your consent, that could result in criminal conviction and in fines. Next slide. Okay, the one other thing to talk about is extraterritorial effect. We've talked previously and multiple times about jurisdiction, right? How every court has jurisdiction, meaning it has responsibility over a particular territory. Local courts have jurisdiction for that local area, state courts over that state, and the Supreme Court over the entire country. But sometimes laws can have application beyond your territory, and that is unusual because the idea is that every country can only create laws for its own land and the residents in its own land, right? Obviously, the Indian Parliament should not be creating laws for Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or China. First of all, they won't care, but also they just shouldn't. Then what's the point of having countries and boundaries, right? But sometimes countries do create laws that have a reach outside of that country, and that reach can be of different kinds. Yesterday we talked about one example, the EU privacy legislation called EU GDPR, which applies to European Union citizens even when they are outside of the European Union. Similarly, the US has laws relating to bribery, which applies to subsidiaries of US companies which are not in the US. So it says that subsidiaries, meaning companies that are owned by a US company but are operating somewhere else in some other country, cannot pay bribes in that country, right? So that is an example of how laws apply outside of their own territory. Similarly, the Information Technology Act also has a provision that has extraterritorial effect. Extraterritorial meaning outside of your territory, right? It says, this act shall apply to an offence or contravention committed outside of India by any person if the act or conduct constituting the offence involves a computer system or computer network located in India. So even if the person is sitting outside of India, but the computer where the record is maintained that he has given away information on, or if he is a hacker and if the hack occurs in India, right? We talked about how where the event occurs, where the incident occurs, then you can prosecute in wherever that incident occurs, right? This law says it's an offense. The hacking itself is an offense, but I can prosecute that person who is sitting outside of India, right? And how do you do that? Again, that boils down to sort of logistics. Courts can try a case even when somebody is not in front of them. Again, the example of Vijay Mallya, he had left the country, right? And there are many other examples like that. When they know that they are getting into trouble, a lot of people just leave the country. But the court went ahead, heard the case, and finally found that he had committed a crime and passed an order of arrest. And then, well, what do? You can't arrest him. Indian police can't go to London and arrest somebody there. So then they have arrangements between countries to execute that. There are, obviously that person will never come back into India, most likely, because the minute he steps into Indian territory, he can be arrested. But then there is also an international police network called the Interpol, and you can have arrest warrants executed through that. And sometimes countries amongst themselves have these extradition treaties where people can be moved from one country to another to be able to be continued to be tried in their home country. Okay, so that's an example of how the Information Technology Act has extraterritorial effect, so goes beyond the jurisdiction, because it clearly recognizes that computer systems can be accessed from anywhere in the world, not just from the local territory. I just want to touch upon briefly on 3 new laws, all enacted in 2023, all came into force last year in 2024. And that is, again, you might have heard about this a little bit in the news, the old Indian Penal Code, IPC, from the 1860, and the Criminal Procedure Code, Indian Evidence Act, all of those laws are from the 1800s, because the British gave those to us, and we kept them, we kept changing them, making amendments, we kept modifying them, but finally in 2023, all of those were replaced completely with new laws. One is called the BNS, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, which is the replacement for the IPC, and then the BNSS for the Criminal Procedure Code, and the BSA for the Indian Evidence Act. All of these laws don't sort of radically change everything, right? The principles are still the same as they used to be in the Indian Penal Code or Criminal Procedure Code or Indian Evidence Act. I think the difference is now that the IPC, how many of you have heard of section 420 of the IPC? Yeah, you have. Yeah, so you have so section 420 is often used in Hindi, at least 420, right? It's used as a way to say someone is a fraudster, except in the BNS it's no longer section 420. So I think there are movies that have the name 420 and things like that. So now you can't make movies with the name Chachi 420. Yeah. So now they have to rename, or the new movies that talk about fraudsters have to come up with a new relevant section under BNS. But anyway, so the principles are obviously still there. But some of the things as it relates to cyber crimes that the new laws incorporate, which did not exist in the old laws, right? Even though they could have been amended, it's hard to keep changing laws. So the new laws have this concept of an organized crime, meaning multiple people coming together to do a crime. And the BNS recognizes that cybercrime as an organized crime. Again, in most of these cases of digital arrest and FedEx scams and all of that, there are multiple people working together like a gang, right? So organized crime is basically gangs working together. So the law recognizes now that even cybercrime, you can have a gang working together, and that's important because now they can prosecute multiple people at the same time for the same crime. And then it now expressly says, earlier courts had to read into the existing law. They had to say, okay, if you say hate speech is not only what a person says, but also what he may post on Facebook, right? But now the law expressly says, in writing it says, the new laws expressly say that it is not only spoken words, but also anything that may be said electronically or done electronically. So it could be emails, it could be text messages, social media posts, all of that. Otherwise, each time when you go to under the previous law, each time one of these came up, at least the first time that one of these came up, the court would have to think about, well, is a text message the same as hate speech and things like that, right? And now you don't need to do that, the law automatically says it is. Similarly, where obscene material, and another important difference is, new addition is that electronic records, which is email, social media posts, electronic documents and all of those are included as primary evidence under the BSA, Indian Evidence, the Bharatiya Saksha Adhiniyam. What that means is, yes, so it does, and the IT Act, Information Technology Act, has most of the provisions relating to sharing of information or disclosing of information without consent and so on. But the BNS also recognizes that they both act together, right? So it's not as if one excludes the other. So just as before, under the Indian Penal Code also, you could go against an individual for a crime if there is a crime involved. Same way, under the BNS also, sharing someone's information to harm them, or using someone else's personal information disclosing it without consent in a manner that harms them is a crime. That is not addressed specifically under the BNS because that is addressed under the Copyright Act itself, right? So every legislation, the way it operates is, more generically to answer your question, right? Every law first typically sets out the rules, right? It sets out, for the Copyright Act, for example, it sets out, okay, what is copyright, what are your rights, so on and so forth. Then there's another part of it that talks about, well, if that right is violated, what are the consequences? And the consequences could be civil, meaning penalties or fines, or it could be criminal, meaning imprisonment, depending on the severity of the action, right? Typically, for low severity issues, you don't want to send someone to jail because that is a significant restriction on somebody's liberty, right? But for situations with high severity, you are likely to have criminal consequences. That same law, for example, copyright, because it talks about that one subject, copyright, it will usually cover all of that: civil consequences, criminal consequences, what is copyright, and so on. Whereas the general laws, which apply to every situation, like the Indian Penal Code or the BNS now, talk about every area, right? So it is a crime to murder is a crime, right? Or it is a crime to steal from someone. That is, it's general, it's broad, right? Again, the Information Technology Act is more specific. It's talking about information technology and cyberspace more specifically. So that's why the specific laws will have provisions relating both criminal and civil consequences also in them. And then you can also have these general laws which the police can decide which one it wants to use or whether to use both. Right? When they are trying a case, prosecuting a case, they will decide whether to use both or which one to use, which better fits for that case. Okay. So just on the last point, electronic records, under the new law, they are now considered as primary evidence. What that means is, under the old law, if you wanted to show an email as evidence of something, so let's say I took a loan of 50,000 rupees from Professor Dasarathy, and he sent me, and I just took the 50,000 rupees from him, and I sent him an email saying, I promise to pay you 50,000 rupees after 10 days. And then after 10 days he comes and asks me, where is my 50,000 rupees? And I say, what are you talking about? Right? So he would say, well, you sent me an email, I have your email. Right? Initially, under the old law, he would have to go to court and say, here is the email. And then the court would say, well, that's an email, okay, but show me now how that email was obtained, that is in fact a true email, verify that email. So they won't on the face of it accept an electronic message, an email, as evidence. It has to be backed up by a number of other things. So it was considered what's called secondary evidence. It's not primary evidence, right? Whereas now it says the electronic documents and emails are considered primary evidence, meaning as soon as you show the email, it is considered as evidence on its face. Obviously, it has to have met certain criteria, right? Obviously, electronic messages, emails, all of those can be tampered with. So you have to be able to show that it was not tampered and things like that. But at least once those criteria are met, automatically the court accepts that as evidence. Next slide. Okay, so now we'll go to a slightly more fun part. You're back to being the Supreme Court. It's 3:15. Okay, so about 10 more minutes maybe. So you're back to being the Supreme Court. You have a decision to make again. So let's look at the facts of this case. Before that, I want to show you the law that you have to read, a piece of law that you have to read and think about. Click next. Okay, before you is the section 66A of the Information Technology Act. Next. Here, I'll give you a couple of minutes to read it. I know the font is a little small, but I'll read it out for you after a minute. Okay, I'll read it out once. Any person who, by means of a computer or communication device, sends any information that is grossly offensive, meaning very offensive, right, false, and meant for the purpose of causing annoyance, inconvenience, danger, obstruction, insult, injury, criminal intimidation, enmity, hatred, or ill will. So a lot of things there. So anybody who by means of a computer or communication device, phone, sends any information that is any one of these things which is false and meant, it is either very offensive or false, and it is meant to cause annoyance, insult, injury, enmity, hatred, ill will, any of those things, meant to deceive or mislead the recipient about the origin of such messages, meaning you're not sure who is sending it, etc., shall be punishable with imprisonment up to 3 years and with fine. Okay? So long story short, if something is by through a computer or through a communication device, a phone, if someone sends something that is very offensive or false and it is meant to incite someone or cause danger or injure someone or create enmity or inconvenience or annoyance, and it is not clear who sent that message, then that person who sends that message can be punished with imprisonment up to 3 years. Okay, so this is the law before you. Can you next slide, please? Next. Okay, so somebody in Mumbai, posted a message on Facebook. Young girl, she was about 18 or 19. She posted a message on the day that Bal Thackeray died. The next day was declared by the state government as a holiday out of respect for Bal Thackeray. And she posted a message on Facebook saying, every day ignore the typos, but every day thousands of people die, but still the world moves on. Just due to one politician death, a natural death, everyone goes crazy. Respect is earned, not given out. Definitely not forced. Today Mumbai shuts down due to fear, but not due to respect. Okay? Next. Okay. No, just go back one slide. Okay, leave it there. Here's something else that someone else posted in a different context. K. Chidambaram amassed more wealth than Robert Vadra. Okay, I'm not going to ask you if either of these statements are true or not. That's not relevant. But this is what one person in Mumbai posted on their Facebook account on the day that a statewide holiday was declared because of Bal Thackeray's death. And the second statement was what somebody else posted on their Twitter account, I think, just after reading some news about how much K. Chidambaram was worth. Okay, so here's the question to you Supreme Court judges. The police in both cases filed a lawsuit under section 66A. They prosecuted the person who wrote the first message on Facebook. They arrested her and also arrested the person who posted the message on Twitter, the second message. Supreme Court, what do you think? Supreme Court judges, what would your decision be? Is that should the imprisonment, is that correct? A is the, okay, let's given the way the law reads, do you think that law is fine as it is and the way it's applied, right? Because when usually cases get to the Supreme Court when not just when some law is there, but when that law is actually applied and someone is affected. So the person before you today, Supreme Court, is the girl who wrote this message on Facebook. She has been arrested. She has come to you, Supreme Court, saying, this is unfair. This is unconstitutional. They are taking away my life and my liberty. What do you think? What would you say about section 66A? Remember, you're the Supreme Court. You can strike down any law saying it is unconstitutional, it is disproportionate, Remember from yesterday? You could say it is disproportionate. You could say it is fair because it's a criminal law. It is just because unless you have criminal laws and unless you have the ability to monitor um, and keep rule of law, then there is no rule of law at all, right? Remember also the context that there have been many times when there have been WhatsApp forwards. I don't know if many of you remember news stories when WhatsApp forwards have resulted in people being beaten up. WhatsApp forwards have resulted in communal violence, and often those WhatsApp forwards or Facebook posts are fake. They are taken from 20 years ago of something else happening 20 years ago and posted as if it happened yesterday, and that creates law and order issues.
I particularly don't think first one defamation, it's just opinion, more political opinion. So it's not definitely a case of defamation.
Mm-hmm.
Basically strikes down our fundamental rights, freedom of speech, freedom of expression.
Yeah? Yes.
Could be freedom of expression, but if it attacks somebody, their integrity, that's a different issue. This is, in my view, he's making a opinion that we should have a holiday for all that we are doing.
Politicians talk ill about each other every time, they are not affected by this law.
Yeah, but that is the police being fair versus unfair and all of that, right? Yes, you're right. Politicians say so many things against each other, but none of them get arrested.
Given Paul Gandhi's stature,
Yeah.
influenceability,
Mm-hmm.
on the day of his death, his message could have linked to annoyance, inconvenience to the public, hatred, and even hatred.
Yes, all of those, absolutely.
The fact of the posted by a 19 years old girl, let's imagine a 65 years old man belonging to another party. The same.
Yeah.
That's the only common people are affected.
True, and that's a different discussion. But you're right. So the police arrested her exactly on that basis, right? You are trying to incite violence now, right? And in fact, I think when she went to the police station to apologize, she actually went to the police station to apologize, and she deleted her message and then went to the police station. There were 1,000 Shiv Sena supporters already there, right? So she incited violence, she incited enmity. But the question before you, the Supreme Court, is not whether she can be arrested. She was arrested. The question before you is the law fair, and we don't have to think too much about is it constitutional and all the nuances of the constitution. Just think about, is the law fair?
And is a problem. 3 years, after 3 years, all will find.
Okay. So civil.
Imprisonment is a big punishment for just communication device information.
Right.
Misleading of this information for this small crime, imprisonment is a big punishment.
Is a disproportionate reaction to what could be a fairly small infringement.
Just like a criminal acting as a criminal.
Right, right. Any other thoughts this side? Any thoughts on whether any part of this law seems to be problematic? I mean, again, remember that social media is used for inciting violence. It is used to generate ill will and hatred. We know that, right? And it happens every day, not every day, but it happens often enough that it's important to try and track that down. There were, again, so many examples of violence that started because somebody put a fake post up on WhatsApp and it spread.
Not just violence. You can make someone commit suicide by sending a offensive message.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It can cause
Exactly.
Can be misused by the ruling party.
Right. Exactly right. So goes back to, is the law as it is crafted just too vague, too broad? What do you mean by causing annoyance? Anybody can be annoyed by anything, right? Pretty much. What do you mean by inconvenience? It's too broad a term. What does inconvenience mean? Everything can be an inconvenience. When it goes to 40 degrees Celsius, it's inconvenient to sit outside, right? Okay, maybe enmity, you can think about what that means. Maybe you can say, criminal intimidation, because that has a little more depth than just intimidating someone. It has to have some criminal intent behind it. Maybe that's okay. But all the other things, right? Danger, too broad. What do you mean by danger? What do you mean by insult? What do you mean by ill will? Right? So ultimately the Supreme Court decided that this law is unconstitutional. This particular section of the Information Technology Act was unconstitutional because of exactly this reason. Too broad, too vague, and therefore could be misused and abused, and in fact was misused and abused in both of these cases. Right? It is infringing on your freedom of speech, exactly as you said. Right? If I cannot even have an opinion and express that opinion publicly, then where is my freedom? Where is my freedom of speech? Because whatever I say is inevitably going to cause annoyance or inconvenience or ill will to somebody, right? And if that is the basis on which I can be arrested, then there is really no freedom of speech at all. But then what about the real problem of social media being used to incite violence and to promote ill will and so on. So what the government did do after this case was they introduced a new rule, a different rule that had more specifics in place, right? That had restrictions on intermediaries as well, specifically, right? That said you cannot forward. If someone complains that a message could be insightful or could be violent, then you cannot allow that forwarding feature. Those kinds of technical sort of blocks, but also under the law, they created laws that would allow the government in certain very specific cases to block messages from being forwarded or being posted, and then go back to that takedown notice that we talked about yesterday, right? The government can then send out an order to the social media intermediaries saying take down this post within 24 hours. Okay, next you can click next. Yes. So the Supreme Court said the phrase reasonable restriction, which is under the Constitution, right? You can have reasonable restrictions, but reasonable restrictions connotes that the limitation imposed on the enjoyment of a right should not be arbitrary or excessive, which is required beyond what is required in the interest of public. So obviously, whatever restriction you need to have on your fundamental rights, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, right to life, right to liberty, have to be reasonable and proportionate. Next slide. Okay. So just a couple of more minutes. We are beyond time, but couple of more minutes on just how enforcement of a lot of these cyber crimes is occurring. This is all news from few days ago, January 20th, January 30th. So they are, the police is beefing up its resources to tackle cybercrime, because they recognize that this is increasing quite significantly. Next slide. And the government also has a number of resources now in place to track cyber crimes and to try and minimize it. So there is something called the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal. That's the link. Anybody can report a crime there. So that it's just one place you can go. You can report a cyber crime, and they will coordinate with the local authorities, local cybercrime cells. Every state has, and many cities have, the police has its own cybercrime cell, so they coordinate and send it down there. And that National Cybercrime Reporting Portal is part of the Cybercrime Coordination Center that has its own website and has awareness programs and things like that. The Cybercrime Reporting Portal has now also started a program where there is a suspects list. So they consolidate information on various individuals, email accounts and phone numbers from where suspected crimes are occurring, right? So that, and individuals can go and add to that. Obviously they do a check before. You can't just add, you have a fight with your friend, you can't add his phone number there and put him on that list. But they do have a suspected list now, a list of suspects, so that even you can go in and check whether, if you're getting regular calls from somebody, you can go in and check on the database, is that person already on that database or something like that, right? So the government is trying has a number of measures in place to step up enforcement as it relates to cybercrime. Okay, I think that's all that I had for today. If you have any questions, welcome these. You tell me. Yeah, so things like defamation, it's in the name itself, right? Defamation, it depends on fame. You say something bad about me, I do not have any fame. So it's not going to matter. Police is not going to care, right? I may feel I am harmed, and I will make sure you're not in my class next time. But beyond that, there is really no harm, or very limited harm, right? Sure, I could argue that my reputation and it is impacting my professional reputation and my my ability to carry on my other professional activities and so on and so forth. So yes, but obviously that's not the same as Narendra Modi's fame, and so the impact is obviously higher there. Yes, under the constitution we are all equal in the sense we all have one vote, but that doesn't mean we are equal in some respects, right? I mean, certainly for a libel or slander or defamation, what are you looking at? You're looking at what is your fame for you to claim that you have been defamed, right? So yes, not to say that there is no impact at all, right? The impact on me of someone saying something bad about me, it may impact me personally, right? And so that's why it is still a crime, and I can still go to the police, and I can still file a lawsuit, all of that. But the impact it has, at least on a civil lawsuit, the damages that I could get are probably very low. On the criminal side, yes, you're right, it doesn't really matter. It is still a crime. It is a crime for Narendra Modi, it is a crime against me as well, right? So in that sense we are both equal, but again it depends on what is the real harm. I mean, as a practical matter, the police is also going to prioritize, right? If they have 25 cases, are they going to focus on your case, or are they going to focus on the murder that also happened at the same time in the same neighborhood or whatever, right? And the theft that also happened, right? So as a practical matter, obviously your case is going to go to the bottom of the pile. Yeah, that's an interesting question. The law doesn't make any distinction between sort of a closed WhatsApp group or an open WhatsApp group and all of that, right? It is a mode of communication, and is no different than when you are in a group of friends You are saying whatever you want to amongst each other, right? Right now you may think you're all friends, and if I call somebody a big thief, he doesn't take offense because he is my friend. But tomorrow he may say, you called me a big thief. I am going to go file a suit saying you defamed me. You can't stop him from doing that, right? Yeah, same principle, right? I might call in my WhatsApp group, I might call someone an idiot, right? Or I may say, whatever. It may be something else, exactly. I may say, yeah, exactly. It may be something outside. You may say, I hate this politician, and put it on your WhatsApp group. Ultimately, you don't have control about where that message goes, right? So technically, if that message spreads like wildfire and is forwarded millions of times, it's made into a meme and all of that, then it could result in the same kind of situation. Now, is that a crime? No, because you are expressing your freedom of speech and expression. When does that cross into some sort of criminal defamation or some sort of criminal conduct, right? If I say I hate politician X, we should go kill him tomorrow. That is a problem. If I say I hate politician X, okay, you hate politician X, so what? And even if it's spread to everybody in the country, it's okay. That's your opinion. That's freedom of speech, and that's protected in the Constitution. Okay, any other questions? Anything else that anyone wants to talk about? Yeah. Call this course, that course, yes. Yes. So there is a do not call registry. You have to actively go on to that registry and put your phone number there, and these companies are not supposed to then call you. How effective that is questionable. You will probably still get calls. I mean, as a practical matter, the only good thing is nowadays, at least on my Airtel phone, you get those messages saying suspected spam and all of that. So that's a technological solution. But yeah, but there are laws that stop them from making spam calls, which is why often these spam calls nowadays don't even originate in India. They originate from outside of India for exactly this jurisdictional issues, right? Okay, if that is it, I think tea is outside, and this will be my last session. So thank you very much, everyone. It was a pleasure to be here. Good luck for the rest of the course.